We are live and local at the Mezcal movie sets here in Mezcal, Arizona, just near Benson, Arizona. I'm Todd Ryan. Live and local, brought to you by Ed Morse Automotive Group in Sierra Vista. Mexican gray wolves is the subject today here at the Mezcal movie set. They're endangered and protected by law in Arizona. In 1998, 11 wolves were released into Arizona and New Mexico in order for them to multiply, and they have big time. In fact, there are now over an estimated 286 wolves in southeast Arizona and New Mexico, but they are attacking and killing livestock and pets in many cases. Ranchers are already struggling with prolonged drought and rising prices, and the wolves are posing a threat to their way of life. That's the subject today. In fact, yesterday, New Mexico declared a state of emergency against the Mexican gray wolves as well, because the problem is so bad there. Joining us right now, cattle rancher Jacob Kartchner, joining us to our right, and Arizona State Representative Lupe Diaz are joining us as well here to talk about this serious issues. First of all, guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Well, let's start here with Jacob. Jacob, what's going on with the Mexican gray wolves? Are they attacking your cattle here in Mezcal?
So no, they're not attacking my cattle here yet. Okay. So let me go back a little bit. So like you'd said, there was originally 7 turned out up in the Blue Wilderness Primitive area, and that was what was considered in 1998 as the reintroduction zone, and then the recovery zone actually extended to where we're sitting today. And since that time, they've reproduced and they've expanded, but the reintroduction zone didn't actually change until about 2015 when they rewrote what's called the 10J rule. And at that point in time, they expanded the reintroduction zone, so now they have placed a pair of wolves down here in Cochise County. In the last couple of months since those wolves were introduced down here, they've killed about, I believe the last number that I heard was about 25 that they've killed in Cochise County, only 4 of which have been confirmed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Now, the reason that is, and let me explain that to you, is the burden of proof for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to be able to say that cow was killed by a wolf is so high that unless you have photographic evidence or bite marks on that cow, you're never going to get it proven. So there's that pair of wolves that are down there in the Leslie Canyon, over Tex Canyon, east of Douglas area, and they've been responsible for over 24 of those kills. There was another wolf kill over by the Chiricahua National Monument on private land that was confirmed. It was actually confirmed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife that it was an uncollared male wolf that doesn't even factor into that number that you gave of 286 that they know are running around out there. Wow.
Now, I read a story about the wolves attacking a newborn calf as it was being born. Did you hear about that story?
So that happens on a daily basis throughout the recovery zone. Ranchers have been dealing with this up there around the Blue Wilderness area for over 27 years. The wolves will kill newborn calves. They'll actually grab a hold of a calf as it's coming out of the cow and just eat what they want there. They'll also sometimes kill the cow, but the economics, there's no economic benefit to having a wolf. There's economic benefit to having cattle, and those cattle, you can't just draw the line at this cow was killed by a wolf. You have to also factor in the fact that the stress put on those animals because of the wolf pressure. You have lessened weights, so your calves are going to be lighter because of that stress, and of course the economic impact of those ranchers having to their property not only being taken from them in the wolves killing their cattle, but their property is actually decreased in value over time because nobody wants to buy a ranch where the wolves are there.
Yeah. State Representative Diaz, who represents our area here, or Lupe, I should say. Well, with many of the ranchers located in your district here, what are your thoughts about resolving these attacks by the gray wolves?
You know, Todd, I met with several of the ranchers up in the Blue area. Last couple of weeks ago, we were up there at the Mingus Ranch there in Clifton, and the Arizona Cattle Ranchers Association is going to be meeting in Wilcox. So we've been meeting with several of the ranchers out there. Have heard a lot of their stories about how they're losing the cattle out there, and also their dogs. You know, a lot of the pets that they have that are there to help them. Ranchers are afraid to get out there and with their dogs on their runs. So a couple of things that we're looking at is you know, we've been looking at this is a federal issue. So federally, we're glad to be able to see that you know, Lauren Boebert in Colorado is moving a bill to go ahead and remove the wolf from the Endangered Species Act. And once that happens, then we can go ahead and start moving here in Arizona. What I'd like to see happen, so there's like 268 wolves, 280, let's see, how many wolves are there? 268 wolves, something like that. And the benchmark is 320. Once it reaches that, then, you know, Game and Fish can come in and start issuing permits for, you know, balancing that out. In other words, being able to hunt wolves. But what we'd like to go ahead and do is encourage the ranchers that if these wolves are in private property, they can actually shoot these wolves. Now, what we want to do is bring in a law that says that if they are coming against your cattle, even on state land, then you can go ahead and come against them, but that you would have to report back to Game and Fish. And so there's a lot of different things. One of the other things that we're looking at is the livestock loss board goes ahead and funds the ranchers $2,224 or something like that. It's almost $2,400. It's within that range. And but like Jake was just saying, it's hard to prove a kill. And so right now we have enough money. There's like $47,000 in the livestock loss board fund, and the ranchers can claim up to about 22 kills right now. What we're doing today is we want to go ahead and bring, you know, put this in the public eye, so that people understand, you know, the pressures that the ranchers are facing. So we're doing that. The other thing that we're going to be doing is we're writing a letter to Congress so that they can go ahead and push the bill that Lauren Boebert is pushing, and a letter to President Trump to remove that, and also to be able to really enforce the Pet Protection Act, which allows the ranchers to go ahead and kill the wolves if they're coming into their ranches. And then, like I said, also we want to go ahead and build up the fund so that ranchers can go ahead and claim their losses. But $2,000, you know, even $2,500 is not anywhere near the value of a cow, because you're looking at that calf growing and also producing more calves. And then, you know, their value in the market is not anywhere that amount. You know, just the effort, it just doesn't even come close. This is so unfair for the industry. And you know, the cattle industry is like, I think I read it was like a 37-point-some billion dollar industry here in Arizona. And that's one of the C's of Arizona that we're looking at.
Is this something that President Trump can do an executive order on if he wanted to? I'm just curious.
You know, I'm not entirely sure. I think Lupe may have a better answer to that.
I think that if it came to his attention, he could do it as president. He could probably, move on that behalf. I know that he is sticking with the new number that President Obama established, and that's 300 and I think it was 320.
So
yeah.
And if I may,
go ahead.
Originally in 1998, when they first started to establish, and again, if you go back on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife's own documentation, they identified the Mexican gray wolf as experimental and non-essential. So And initially they said as soon as they had 100 wolves on the ground in the wild, that would be the recovery. And then in 2015 they changed that benchmark and they moved that to 325. And so now, there's 284, 286, something like that, running around in the wild that they know of. They obviously didn't know the one over there in the Chiricahua National Monument that killed that calf. But they also have another 300 in captivity. So right now there's over almost 600 as far as the population and genetic diversity and everything else that accomplishes 5 times what the original goal was. And now all of a sudden they're going to try and move the benchmark on us again.
And Jacob, you're a board member for the cattle growers in Arizona. What are you specifically pushing for and would like to see done here? Obviously, some of the things that Representative Lupe Diaz is talking about, I'm sure, as well.
So, and I can't speak to the board without their approval, but I will tell you this much: there are several petitions circulating right now that I'm really trying to push personally, because, and those petitions are for the delisting and defunding of the wolf project. Again, it's non-essential and experimental, and we've far surpassed those benchmarks that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife had originally put in place. We need to delist them and defund them.
Right. If I may too, that a lot of the ranchers and farmers, even with the whole ag community, they're asking, why is this happening to to the rural industries that are here? And with Obama, we found out that they want to go ahead and be a player in the world scene. So if you reduce if you reduce the industries that are producing the food, then you start importing foods from other countries. But that's starting to change now with President Trump. So we're hoping that maybe some of this will begin to change as well, and we'll be able to see a change in the in some of the laws coming down from Washington, D.C.
And Lupe, you were talking earlier about monies available to reimburse ranchers for cattle deaths.
Right.
Due to the Mexican gray wolves. Can you explain that a little bit more? If a cattle rancher is watching and has experienced that, you got to show some proof, though, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, you have to show some proof, and it's only the federal wildlife inspectors that can come in and deem them as a wolf kill, and it's hard. I mean, this is a crime scene. This is actually treated as a crime scene. I'm hearing that the federal inspectors are saying that you have to preserve the scene, but there's only 2 in Arizona, and they're living in northern Arizona. So for them to come down here to be able to confirm a kill is really difficult for them to do, and it's difficult for a rancher, because then the crime scene deteriorates pretty quick, and if you don't take care of it right away, then you have coyotes and you have other animals coming in that will disrupt the whole thing. And then they have to measure the bite marks and all kinds of things that have to be verified. So for a rancher, it's really unfair. I mean, he is in a really disadvantage. So then now what we're doing is the ranchers have to also submit a claim to the Game and Fish with the cattle loss board that is within the Game and Fish, and then they will determine whether they can go ahead and compensate a rancher. So there's a long process for him to be compensated, and again, he'll never get what the calf is worth. When you know that calf will grow up and also calve other cattle.
And Jacob, if a rancher experiences and they suspect that one of a gray wolf killed one of their cattle, what do you suggest they do? Because obviously there is difficulties here. Because I'm thinking in my head, if there's like some fur of the gray wolf that's left on scene and stuff like that, I mean, how would you best preserve the site to have them be able to approve you? For compensation. So
again, that like we've talked about, that burden of proof is so high. You have to preserve the scene the best you can. My best advice would be to contact your local law enforcement. I know that the Sheriff's Office, the Ranch Patrol has been working with Game and Fish, has been working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on some of these active wolf kills that have been going on here in Cochise County. But I also know that the Sheriff's Office has lobbied to be able to investigate those, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife has pretty much told them no, that it's not going to happen. Game and Fish has told them no, it's not going to happen. These guys are trained, and if they need more training, then send them more training, but these guys are local, they know what's going on, and they can be there in a heck of a lot less than 8 hours. You know, that again, with that livestock loss board, they also have the option of having range riders come down and push these wolves using less lethal or non-lethal means off of your ranch to get them away from your cattle. All that's doing is pushing it onto your neighbors. And so how good's your neighbor going to be every time that a calf gets killed on your place? You just chase the wolves onto their place. So, you know, as far as preserving the scene, you need to contact your local law enforcement agency, and they can get out there. They are trained to preserve that scene until, and in today's world, until that U.S. Fish and Wildlife investigator can get down here from Show Low, which is, again, 8 hours or, you know, at best next morning. And so...
Now, we just had a question here from Gretchen Kent, and she makes a little statement here, and I'll read it. The Endangered Species Act expired in 1992, yet Department of Interior keeps spending taxpayer money on it. That should be a violation of the Federal Anti-Deficiency Act, which requires both authorization and appropriation to make a federal action. Appropriation alone does not make this a legal action. Why not sue the state Fish and Game for participation in an illegal program? Now, that's what she's saying. Is what she's saying making any sense?
Well, I can go ahead and address that. Well, the lawsuit should really be going, if there's going to be any lawsuits, it really needs to go to the federal level. And I think that what's happening with the congressional members, they're looking at that now. If we try to sue the state Game and Fish, then it would really hamper what they're trying to do in helping the ranchers with the little means that they have. One of the other things that, once you start getting into lawsuits, one of the things we haven't talked about is the fact of the special interest groups. The Center for Biological Diversity, a lot of your environmentalists, they're pushing for this predator to be loose in our public lands. And so, the ranchers are at real disadvantage. So what's happening is that these groups are putting a lot of pressure on your lawmakers at the federal level and also at the state level. So there's always this, tug of war that's going on at the legislature when it comes down to this issue. So yes, we can go ahead and start looking at that, but that's going to be that'll be something that, that'll have to be the state suing the feds.
And to that point, we've been able to track over $75 million worth of taxpayers' money has gone to the wolf, not counting the special interest groups and the amount of money that they've pumped into this program. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been pumped into this program. That again, I can't say it enough. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, by their own admission, said that this is an experimental, non-essential population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, how can the public get involved? Any suggestions here to put pressure on our representatives, or what do you suggest?
Yeah, Jake, I like getting around and talking to some of the constituents and those that are really directly affected by that. I've gotten to really love the ranchers and all what they're doing. One of the things that Jake has mentioned to me was the fact that, there's several taxing districts that are very specific to industries. And what happens is that ranchers can actually tax themselves and put it into a pot to be able to help, either fight back and mitigate this issue, by having this pot available. And basically there's just a lot of ways to be able to, if they can come together and collectively bring their monies together to be able to address this issue, I think that would help. But it does require legislative approval for tax districts. And there's other means, I'm sure, that
My big thing is, like I said, right now there are a couple of petitions floating around. They're online, and it lays out a pretty telling story on what's going on. In some of these ranchers that have written these petitions will tell their story and the amount of loss that they've experienced. One ranch in northern Arizona has experienced over $325,000 worth of loss over the last few years. Not even counting depredation. That's just, and that's, so let's start looking at those petitions for defunding and delisting these non-essential populations of predators that are running around in our backyards. Not only are they taking our cattle, they're taking the dogs that are chained to the porch, they're taking horses out of the corrals. I mean, and get to know, what's going on. But the big thing is that public knowledge of what's going on, and like I said, reach out to some folks, and we'll be circulating those petitions here online, and please sign on to them, and let's get this wasteful government spending under control.
Yep.
And maybe we could get those links to so people can, that are watching this video, if they want to sign those petitions online, they can do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we'll try to get that in the post description here and in the comment section of this video for those that would like to help in this particular situation. Representative Lupe Diaz, you're going to be working hard here, it sounds like, on this issue to try to see if we can come to some sort of conclusion here as soon as possible. And
right.
Any hopes that this can be resolved in the next few months?
A lot of our Republican bills and measures that we're really trying to work for, a lot of times they're getting vetoed. We're really needing a Republican governor to be able to do that, and so it may be a longer run. But we're really looking at some of the things that the agencies can do. We don't need that to happen at that level, but we're going to really start looking at what the agencies can do once the benchmark is reached, get some money involved in there, get the ranchers submitting their applications for the deprivation and the funding for the losses that they're incurring. We can do something. And that's what we're endeavoring to do. We're going to be building up that fund. I'm going to be putting in a line item increase for our budget this year to be able to get that, so that the ranchers might have that funds available.
All right.
And if you don't mind, the only thing that I could add to that would be is let's maybe if you could talk to somebody from Game and Fish and see if we can't get some of our local law enforcement, our sheriff's office. Right. We have a ranch patrol here in Cochise County that's qualified, that can make those determinations. If they need a little bit of extra training, maybe coming from you, it might mean something else. But yeah, we really need to look out for the interest. The ranchers this is their personal property that's being destroyed. Right. And we need to be able to have somebody respond and do a timely investigation that isn't swayed by bad publicity. Right. If somebody looks at it and says, well, we have 100 confirmed wolf kills in Cochise County, they're going to start looking at, maybe we made a mistake by putting these wolves here. Right. There is no elk prey. The prey base for these wolves is by their own admission elk, and we don't have elk here, so they're going after cattle. So if we can get some local law enforcement to be able to investigate those.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. In fact, we just finished meeting with the Game and Fish Commission. They had their meeting up in Safford just 2 weeks ago when we were there, and I know the director of the Game and Fish, so we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just a curiosity question from me, Jacob. Do most of these kills occur? Do they happen at night or any time, day and? So,
Arizona is very our country where we run cattle is pretty open. So sometimes, and that's one of those things that really hurts our burden of proof, is sometimes we won't actually find the cow for a couple of days. And so the scavengers have already been at it and trying to prove exactly what killed it is a lot more difficult. So as far as when this happens, I honestly couldn't tell you. I've never been involved in one of the investigations, but I will say that, you know, just because the wolf didn't lay teeth into it does not mean that the wolf didn't kill it. And so they'll run them to death. They'll, you know, run them into fences and break their necks and everything else. And so, you know, they're a predator. They're going to prey upon different things, and whether it's at night or during the day, I don't know that it really matters. But sometimes, like I said, it's just difficult to find them when they're out in a 5,000 acre pasture.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking by asking that question that if it was more at night, is there a way that the cattle ranchers can corral the cattle closer to a situation where they can be protected more?
You know, they do that a lot down in South America for the jaguars and stuff like that. But here, like I said, in order to gather 100 cows out of a 5,000 acre pasture, it's just not feasible. It's just not.
All right, guys, very important subject here, and we'll definitely be following it and giving updates as time goes on here. But like I say, we'll put in links in the post description if folks would like to sign, you know, the, what's that called again?
So it's a petition to delist and defund.
Okay, gotcha. And we'll try to get that in the post description of this video as well too. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll keep folks updated here down the road. Todd Ryan here at the Mezcal Movie Ranch here in Mezcal, Arizona. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.